Andrew Morton. It's been a long time.
It has indeed. I've been counting the days.
Ah, me too. Overriding impression of Meghan?
Someone who's very capable, smart, considered, camera ready. Someone who's determined and ambitious.
Tell me about your research into her book.
I live part of the year in Pasadena, just outside LA, and that's where Meghan had boyfriends, where she went to school, where she appeared on stage. So even before the engagement was announced, people in Pasadena, it was just part of the normal conversation. So I got a real head start because I knew people whose kids went to the same school. The boyfriend lived down the same street as the place where she went for English breakfast tea. So there was a kind of a sense of this was a local girl made good.
Were people keen to talk to you? Were they happy to talk about Meghan through the years?
Well, some were, some weren't. I mean, certainly her school teachers were, her drama teachers, some of her friends, some members of her family were. Yeah.
What impression did you get of her when she was at school? I mean, she had quite a challenging upbringing. I mean, it was comfortable, but it was challenging in some ways.
Yeah, I think that's a good description. It was, she didn't want for food, but she did want for certainty. And she always felt, being biracial with a white father and an African-American mother, she always felt she could never join any particular group, either the African-American pupils or the Asian girls, or she always felt she didn't quite belong. So there's that sense of not belonging, being different and feeling different is something which pervades those early years.
And how did that manifest itself for her, would you say?
Well, it manifested itself in specific areas where she would join various clubs so that she didn't have to sit on her own at lunchtime. She always felt a sense that she wasn't really part of the gang, as it were. She felt different. At the same time, she realised that she was a very smart girl and that people wanted her to know her because she was smart. She was, top of the class or thereabouts.
She became increasingly more popular, though, didn't she, as she got older?
Well, she was. It wasn't like she wasn't popular initially. She was just confused about her identity. And there's a story she tells of when she was filling in various boxes in a school form, and one of them, and it said, "Are you African American? Are you Caucasian?" and so on. And there was no box for being biracial, so she didn't know what to do. So she was confused about that, and she asked her father, and he said, "Well, draw your own box," and that served for her as a template going forwards. Draw her own box, be her own person.
Mm. Her parents weren't together that long, were they? They weren't married that long.
Her parents married for about 2 years. When she was barely walking, when she was a toddler, they split up. And that was very much a pattern of her family background, that the fathers were around and they split up after 2 or 3 years. So there's a sense of always something changing in their lives.
She lived with her father during the week when she was at school?
When she was younger, she lived with her mother basically full time, and then during the week, because her father's was working at ABC Studios, which is just round the corner from her school called Immaculate Heart, she would stay with him and then see her mother at weekends.
There was some confusion, if that's the right word, I don't know, it'd be interesting to see which one you use, about what her mother's role was. Local people and step brothers and sisters wanted people to think that Mum was more like the maid, and they described her in that way because of the colour of her skin.
Well, Doria is African American, she's dark skinned, and Meghan is very light skinned, and many people didn't even know she was biracial. And they lived in an area called Woodland Hills, which is predominantly white, quite Jewish, and when she would take Meghan out in the pram, people would say, "Oh, are you the nanny?" And it didn't help either that she didn't have a very good relationship with Tom's eldest daughter, Yvonne, who now calls herself Samantha. And according to her brother, she used to call Doria the maid. So it didn't lend itself to a very happy family interaction.
How do you think that shaped her as a character?
I think it shaped Megan in the sense that she became quite diplomatic in the way that many children of divorced parents are. They're used to kind of balancing and juggling the differing demands and emotional concerns of the father and the mother. And there comes a time where they start to mother their own parents.
Mm. She seems to be very charismatic. We saw the interview with her for the engagement. Not dominant, but certainly knows how to work a room. Was that your impression?
Very much so. I mean, she's been networking, working rooms. I mean, you know, she'd be a journalist. She'd be sitting where you're sitting now if she'd decided to go down a different path. She could have been a diplomat. She could have been a politician. She's more of an activist than other members of the royal family have been. And I'm thinking specifically of Diana. And from an early age, she learnt to speak out, to say her piece, and to make her voice heard.
How would you compare her to Diana?
Well, they both had parents who divorced, so they felt, Diana at school felt different because she was the child of divorced parents. Meghan felt different because she was biracial. They differed in the sense that Diana was very shy. She hated to be in plays. She said that she would only ever appear in a play, a school play, if she stood at the back and didn't have any lines to learn. Meghan, of course, always wanted to be an actress and enjoyed the whole sense of performing. And also, academically, Meghan was top of the class. Diana, as she said herself, was a bit of a twit.
Do you think Diana would like her?
I think Diana would warm to her and respect her as well, because the one thing that performing on stage has done for Meghan is that she's been able to speak out on podiums, at conferences, think on her feet, and is very articulate. Diana, because she was essentially shy as a child, found speech making, which she wanted to be known for. She wanted to be known as a royal workhorse as opposed to a clothes horse. She just felt that that her speech making was rather stilted.
As a mum, I'm always thinking, are you going to be good enough for my son? I'm guessing Diana would have been the same with Harry and Meghan.
Of course, yeah. I mean, and the same with Kate. You know, is this the right person? And it's pretty clear that Harry was besotted with Meghan from a very early stage, and that they were making plans for the future long before the engagement was announced, perhaps even a year before.
So you think that she would have weighed her up, realised that she was going to make her son very happy, and that's all that Diana would have.
Well, I think she would have said to herself, right, what's the emotional connection? And then you could see that they're very touchy-feely, they're very much in love. And also, what does she bring to the party? And she would have said, well, she's already been a humanitarian, she's already been an activist. She will bring something different and something vibrant, some more energy into the royal family. And I think, and also, you know, she's pursued the agenda of gender equality and it's women's rights, something that Diana herself was very interested in. Do you
think she'll get on with Kate?
I think that Kate and her will be a great double act for this, you know.
Like Fergie and Diana?
Well, up to a point, Lord Copper. I mean, Fergie and Diana got on very well until Fergie entered the royal family, and then there's a degree of jealousy. But I mean, and Diana didn't really conform to the kind of attitudes that Fergie had towards monarchy and the royal family.
I wonder if that's my point.
I think that's your point. I mean, I think that with Kate Middleton, you see someone who is very reserved, very considered. I think you see with Meghan Markle someone who is very considered, very thoughtful. Two young women who have know their own minds and know how to get what they want.
Mm. So does that mean they'll get on?
I think that I think that they'll recognise that they have to get on, and I think they'll recognise that Kate one day is going to be queen. Meghan, when all the hoo-ha stops, she's going to be the wife of the man who sits in line to the throne.
But she's used to being centre stage.
Well, she's used to being centre stage, or in actual fact, she's used to being a team player in a drama in Suits, where she was one character amongst 5 or 6, and I think that you see throughout her career this willingness to be part of the team, and I think that will be a great asset and a necessary asset for her going forwards. Because I think the one thing, she's smart enough to understand that you don't come into an institution like the monarchy, which has been around for 1,000 years, and throw your weight around. You sit still, you wait, you listen, you take notes.
She's an incredibly, as you said, clever, articulate young lady. She has been auditioning for a long time for the role of Princess, hasn't she?
I think she's been auditioning for a long time for a role as an actress. I mean, you know, one of the things that struck me about her life is that she only just got in under the wire in the series Suits at the age of 30, at a time in Hollywood when people are saying, well, actually, you might be a bit over the hill.
It's interesting, again, going back to the interview, I rewatched the engagement interview last night, and she sort of almost seemed to misremember how much she knew about the royal family. She said she didn't really know Harry very much, but of course in your book you give the impression that she knew a lot about the royals growing up.
In the book, I talk about the fact that she knew about Diana. She watched the funerals. And she and her friends were inspired to, you know, collect toys and give them to needy children. So there was that element to it. It's a bit like knowing about Donald Trump. In Britain, you know the headline stories. You don't know all the minutiae of what he's doing day by day, whereas in America you tend to do that. It's the same for her. She was an American who knew something about the royal family. Obviously she knew the headlines, she knew the main players, but she didn't know all the other details. And I mean,
she knew who Harry was, though. He was he was the most eligible bachelor in the world.
She knew who he was, of course she did, but I mean, you look at that footage before she met Harry, where she was asked William or Harry, and she kind of looked nonplussed. I mean, you look carefully at that. She was thinking, who the hell are Harry and who's William? And that answer was, she had to be prompted in the answer, oh yes, I'll take Harry.
You've written a lot about other royals as well, haven't you, apart from just Diana. Who do you think she is most comparable to? Of course, many people will compare her to Wallis Simpson, the fact that she's been married before, the fact that she's American, the fact that she carries herself in a certain way, and she's glamorous star, really.
Well, you can compare her to several people. Queen Letizia of Spain. Queen Letizia used to be a journalist.
Yes, she did.
She used to be a TV presenter. She was outspoken. She was articulate. She was divorced. She was a member of a family who were basically Republicans, and she moved into the royal family, and she learned to remain silent and to adapt to a different lifestyle. So I would choose, first of all, Letizia as very similar. I'd also put Diana, obviously, and Wallis Simpson there, because Wallis Simpson was glamorous in her own way, stylish in her own way, as is Meghan. She was also sharp, sparky, and very smart, again, like Meghan.
Margaret?
Princess Margaret? Margaret was more of a rebel and more grand than Meghan is. I think.
But will she be allowed to be that potentially more than Kate, because she's not going to have to, fulfil the role that Kate will? Kate's going to be queen. Meghan's never going to have that heaviness of responsibility.
No, she can have fun with it. She can have fun with the role, and she can explore it. And I think and she can be, as it were, the bird down the mine shaft. For the royal family to test out things, because she and Harry are seen as kind of an interesting couple.
They're a power couple, aren't they?
I think so. I think that they're
individually they're not as strong as they are together.
I think it's the Burton Taylor. It is the fact that together they can change the world, and it's something which inspired them both as they were making the conversation. That he realised that with somebody by his side who is articulate and intelligent and also experienced to some degree in humanitarian work, that together they can make a big difference.
He's transformed over the last few years, hasn't he? I mean, you talk about him again in the book and how he was when he lost his way a bit, and but now you see him Invictus Games, articulate, considered young man who, no wonder he was the most eligible bachelor in the world.
Well, he was the most eligible bachelor because of his position and his birth, but he's actually independent of his birth and the privileges that he's enjoyed. He's shown himself to be a young man with fibre and calibre, and going forwards, he's shown himself that yes, he's had his major issues, and let's not skirt around those. The grief that he felt after his mother's death, the way
he was an angry drunk who didn't know how to behave himself for a time.
For a time, absolutely. As I say in the book, he was an angry drunk who come out of nightclubs looking to pick a fight with paparazzi. And certainly, if the Queen had been faced with the option of can I marry this American actress, Meghan Markle, who's just been divorced, the Queen might have thought, well, just think again, young man.
What do you think of Harry now?
I think that Prince Harry is a young man transformed, and a young man that's a testimony to how good the military is at changing people's characters. And in a way, he's turned into the young man that we've all wanted him to be, and that he's always going to have that halo of Diana surrounding him, and people can see that he's got that aspect of her character inside him, someone who wants to give back.
More so than William?
Well, William's always been a different character, as Diana would have said. He's more Germanic, he's more stolid, he's more serious, he's more cautious, he's articulate and he's intelligent. He was making a speech the other day and somebody was remarking just how good he was on his feet. He didn't need any notes, he just spoke. So he's a worthy successor to any member of the royal family.
How's he going to cope when he has to start to protect his wife? Because we're British, we build people up to knock them down. There will be a moment when criticism starts to build against Meghan. Wonder how she might deal with it, and wonder how he might deal with it.
Well, I always used to say to Diana, don't read the newspapers. And of course, what did she do? She read the newspapers. So the first thing that Meghan's going to stop doing is reading the newspapers. And you're absolutely right. We build people up, we'll knock them down. There'll be all kinds of stories, all kinds of pictures that appear in the continental press, if not in the British press. But as she says herself, it's all noise. So if I just get on with what I've got to get on with, I'm fine. And most members of the royal family, they treat what the mass media are doing as noise. They don't listen to it. They don't read about it. They get a briefing in the morning on a little bulletin board and they'll read the main points. They won't be reading about what some Fleet Street maven is writing about them.
She's going to be a princess. She's not a saint. She has had, as you point out in the book, when she got married and then she decided that she didn't want to be with Trevor Engelson anymore, she sent the rings back in the post. Quite callous.
Well, she's certainly calculating, and she's certainly someone who, when she makes a decision, she goes through with it. And that's something that she says herself, that she's thoughtful and she's considered. And in her defence, she was in Toronto and he was in Los Angeles. Nobody really knows why a marriage ends, but it did end, and very abruptly. And it was a bolt out of the blue, as far as he was concerned, and as far as many of her friends were concerned.
How hard will it be for her to build a life here in the UK, do you think? Because, she is American through and through.
I think it's going to be difficult for her. I mean, there'll be some long nights of the soul where she's thinking, they told me that a walkabout was a red carpet event, but there's no red carpet. It's raining, it's cold, and people all they want to talk about is the weather. So it will be the little details of how does she get a nice ripe avocado in central London? How does she find decent hot yoga instruction? All these things that she's used to. She's led a gilded life. I mean, she's been used to catching planes like other people catch taxis. She's got, one year she was in 12 countries, either on holiday or on humanitarian missions. She didn't need anybody's permission to do what she did. She had a very successful blog, The Tig. She had Instagram. She had a couple of million followers. She was very popular in her own right. And then Harry comes into her life, and she has to start again. So of course there's going to be some difficulties, but she can also see it as a great adventure.
Do you think the mixed race challenge is going to be a challenge for her?
Well, Meghan's already suffered from some racist remarks, but growing up in Los Angeles and seeing the LA riots and having some of the abuse that she saw hurled at her mother, she knows about this. I mean, you know, as someone who's biracial and also light-skinned, going to school, going to college, people treated her as if she was Caucasian, and they would make remarks about black people, about African American people. So she's been used to that. I'm afraid it comes with the territory.
Yeah, Harry said that the stars were aligned, and that's why they got together. But she was the fourth woman that he'd taken to Africa. So, what? You'd have some tea.
Just hang on, I'm just going to calm down. Yeah. I have to say, it makes me smile, because when he said, let's go to Botswana, she was be thinking, oh wow, how fantastic. And I was thinking that the courtiers at Buckingham Palace will be going, the fourth woman, the seventh trip to Botswana, this guy's got style. You know? So because he had taken other girlfriends there, but in a way it was his way of testing them to see, you know, if is there a kind of an emotional connection there, and clearly there was, because they certainly fell in love in those few days that they spent in Botswana.
What is it about Botswana for him, do you think?
It's not just that; it's Africa. If you've ever been to Africa, ever been on safari, you're with the earth, you're with life and death. You've got these grand vistas. It's incredibly romantic, and it's interesting that both Prince Charles and Edward VIII, the former Prince of Wales, took his mistresses to Africa. It's a place. It's a very beguiling continent.
Is this going to be a marriage that lasts?
Well, I think everybody will be giving it a fair wind and hoping so, because they're a genuine couple who can make a difference to the world, and I think that they're aware of that. And it's not like a quick relationship. They spent some months together before the relationship became public. They knew that they wanted each other, and you can see that in the fact that during the courtship, Meghan would be flying in from Toronto to spend 2 days with Prince Harry. Now, that's what I call love. That's what I call, you know, dedication. And Harry was doing the same thing, taking plane rides to Toronto to see her for a couple of nights. So obviously they were totally loved up. And going forwards, they have that humanitarian vision that to make a difference that will sustain them when they become more than just lovers, when they become companions.
So your prediction is happy ever after?
I hope so, and I would drink to that.
You keep dodging that question, don't you?
Well, I'm not going to dodge it then. Yes, yes, happy ever. I'm just trying to put it in context.
Okay.
Happy ever after. I think that Meghan's been married. She knows what she wants. She's found the man of her dreams. And Harry's absolutely right. The stars are aligned. You know, Diana died at 36. Meghan is 36. She's in a funny kind of way picking up the torch, picking up the baton that was dropped by Diana.
Superb. Thank you.
Is that better?
Yeah. Thanks a lot.